My neighbor called my niece's wedding a cult, got cops to storm in with guns mid-vows. She had a panic attack and everything fell apart. Later she said, "Don't bring that pagan mess here." But when I uncovered her Etsy tax scam, I made it public. I was holding the mic, trying to steady my niece's shaky hands as she said her vows, when the screaming started. At first I thought it was kids on the other side of the fence, or maybe someone dropping a plate. But then the shouting snapped into focus. Commands, deep voices, sharp and urgent. "Police! Everybody stay where you are!" I turned toward the back gate just in time to see it crash open. 4 officers rushed in with guns drawn, moving fast across the grass like they were raiding a drug house instead of a quiet backyard wedding in Maplewood, Missouri. The string lights swung overhead. Someone screamed. My niece, my sweet, anxious, already overwhelmed niece, collapsed in the middle of her own ceremony, gasping for air and clawing at her chest. The groom threw himself over her. Guests scrambled behind tables. One officer pointed his gun at the dessert table like the cupcakes were plotting something. It felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. "Who called this in?" I shouted, hands raised, trying to stay calm. "This is a wedding." "A wedding?" One cop, still tense, said they'd gotten a report of a cult ritual involving chanting and possible animal sacrifice. Animal sacrifice. At a wedding officiated by my coworker, who's a notary public and can barely handle conflict at staff meetings. I didn't need to ask who made the call. I already knew. My neighbor, Linda. The woman whose bedroom window overlooks our yard and who has made it her personal mission to police anything that isn't her brand of church-approved normal. They cleared us within minutes. No citations, no warnings, just embarrassment and trauma left behind like confetti that would never fully sweep away. But the wedding was done. My niece couldn't stop crying, and her groom looked like someone had ripped out his spine. Hours later, after everyone left and the yard still smelled like cold barbecue and fear, I walked to the mailbox to get the ruined day behind me. Linda was already there, she always is. Like she has a sixth sense for moments when I'm weakest. She leaned in close, her perfume thick and sour. "Don't bring that pagan mess here again," she whispered, like she was doing me a courtesy. "This is a Christian neighborhood." I stood there frozen, gripping envelopes with shaking hands. Pagan, because the bridesmaids wore rust-orange dresses, because the vows mentioned nature, because we didn't play a hymn, I didn't even fight back. Not yet, I was too angry to speak without screaming. But anger is fuel, and once I'm burning, I don't stop. 2 days later, when the wedding disaster went locally viral through neighborhood gossip groups, complete with edited clips that made us look like criminals, I decided to start digging. I wanted proof of harassment, or maybe past complaints she'd filed. Something to hit back with. I didn't expect to find what I did. It started small. I checked the shop she runs on Etsy. She sells hand-blessed scripture bookmarks, the kind she claims God personally inspires. I clicked through listings, trying to understand how someone so self-righteous could also sell bookmarks shaped like dollar signs. But then I noticed something off in her reviews, customers complaining that she made them send payment through Cash App to avoid Etsy fees. More comments about off-the-books discounts. A few mentions of bulk church orders she insisted be paid directly. I kept digging. And digging. And suddenly I was staring at a pattern so clear, so blatant, so stupidly criminal that I actually sat back in my chair and laughed. She wasn't just a busybody. She wasn't just judgmental. She was running a full-blown tax evasion scheme through her Jesus bookmarks. And the best part? I found something even worse hidden underneath it. Something she definitely did not want anyone to ever see. Something I knew I could use. I didn't always hate Linda. When I first moved to Maplewood 8 years ago, she was just the chatty neighbor who brought over zucchini bread that tasted like lawn clippings. She'd wave at me from her porch, always wearing those pastel cardigans like she was auditioning for a church bulletin cover. At first, I thought she was harmless. Annoying, yes, pushy, definitely, but harmless. She loved giving friendly advice, which usually translated to backhanded comments about my yard, my clothes, the type of car I drove. When my niece started staying with me during her rough freshman year in high school, Linda took it upon herself to check in on her constantly, asking if she was feeling stable, if she knew Jesus, if she needed a woman's guidance instead of the modern nonsense. My niece hated her. Said Linda always looked at her like she was waiting for her to fail at something. Still, I kept things civil. I waved back, I nodded. I accepted the terrible zucchini bread. Then, about 2 years ago, things shifted. Linda got bold. Like she'd decided she was the sheriff of the block and we were all her deputies. It started with noise complaints. A backyard birthday party? Complaint. A 4th of July cookout? Complaint. My brother visiting with his kids and letting them play soccer in the yard? Complaint. I tried talking to her once. I asked her gently if she could come to me instead of calling the city hotline every time she felt disturbed. She smiled. A tight, cold, condescending smile. "I'm just keeping the neighborhood safe," she said. "You should be thanking me." After that, I didn't bother anymore. I ignored her. I tried to live my life, but Linda doesn't like being ignored. Last winter, when I hosted my family for Christmas, she filed a noise complaint at 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Who does that? The cops didn't even knock. They just drove by, saw the lights, and left. But Linda watched from her window like she expected to catch us sacrificing a reindeer. The more I pulled away, the more obsessed she became with monitoring us. She'd note every package, every visitor, every decoration. When my niece got engaged, Linda made a point of asking, loudly in front of other neighbors, whether the groom's family was the kind of people who believe in traditional marriage. I should have told her off then. I should have said something. But my niece didn't want drama before her wedding, and I wanted her day to be peaceful. Peaceful. The irony. The truth. My niece's wedding meant the world to me. It was the first big joyful event in our family after years of stress and losses. I spent months prepping my yard, stringing lights, fixing the deck, renting chairs, coordinating with the caterer. I wanted her to feel safe and loved in a way she rarely did growing up. And Linda destroyed it in less than 10 minutes. After the police raid, my niece and her husband left for their hotel early, emotionally wrecked. The caterers packed up quickly out of embarrassment. My siblings were furious. And I just sat there, in the middle of my torn-apart yard, staring at the gate the police had ripped open. The next morning, Linda posted a long rant on the neighborhood Facebook page about dangerous occult behavior and heathen chanting. People laughed at her in the comments, but that didn't undo the damage. The video clips taken by nosy neighbors spread fast. My niece called me crying again that night, saying she didn't want to look at social media ever again. I hit my breaking point right there. Not because of the embarrassment. Not because of the ruined wedding. Because she hurt my niece. And that meant everything else was off the table. So when I started digging into her Etsy store, I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for understanding. Something that made sense of why she acted like this. Why she hated anything she couldn't control. But what I found wasn't understanding. It was a window into who she really was, selfish, greedy, hypocritical. Someone who weaponized morality while secretly breaking laws to make a quick buck. And the deeper I dug, the darker it got. Because one night, while cross-checking her customer complaints with her special order listings, I found something that didn't match the others. Something she tried to hide under a layer of deleted posts and fake reviews. Something that made everything suddenly make sense. And it wasn't just tax evasion. It was something that could ruin her entire life if it ever came to light. It took me a couple nights to connect all the dots, mostly because I was angry enough that my hands shook every time I typed her name into anything. But once I started mapping out her Etsy transactions, using nothing more than public feedback, timestamps, and the way she worded her custom blessing packages, the pattern got clearer and clearer. Her whole shop was basically a shell game. Every time someone bought a bookmark through Etsy, she'd message them telling them she had a holier alternative available directly, and if they bought that instead, she'd give them a discount. But the discount wasn't a discount, it was the price she actually wanted. The Etsy price was fake, inflated to drive people off the platform. Everything she made through direct payments went straight to PayPal or Cash App, off the books. Hidden, and she wasn't subtle, not even close. Screenshots were plastered all over her reviews. People mentioned unofficial invoices. Some mentioned she refused receipts, saying that God didn't need them. But that wasn't even the worst part. Not yet. The escalation really started when I decided to check her real name, her full, legal name, and search it with different combinations. Church, fundraiser, scam, event, complaint. And I found something. A thread buried in an old local forum from 4 years ago. It was half deleted, but parts were still cached. Someone had accused her of taking money from a church fundraiser she organized back in 2019. It was supposed to fund a mission trip to Guatemala. Instead, the money disappeared, the trip was canceled, and the pastor refused to speak about it publicly. The only comment that stayed up in that thread was from someone who claimed Linda had kept the money because she said God told her she needed it more. I stared at my screen for a long time after that. I always knew she was judgmental. I always knew she liked power. But this, stealing from her own church, the hypocrisy was almost too big to wrap my head around. Still, I needed more. And the more I looked, the more everything escalated. I found her Instagram, where she posted faith crafts and Bible quotes. The same comments about off-platform payments were there too, people confused about why she pushed private sales. Then I searched her username on a resale group and found something she probably never meant anyone to see. A complaint from a customer claiming Linda sent them blessed anointing oil that caused a rash because it contained undisclosed ingredients. They tried to get their money back. Linda blocked them. At this point, I wasn't just angry. I was electrified. All those years she spent treating me like some kind of neighborhood heathen, calling the cops whenever she got bored, whispering her holier-than-thou judgments like she owned the street, and she was the one running multiple scams. The escalation really hit its peak the night I got a message from my niece. She said she ran into one of Linda's church friends at the grocery store. She tried being polite. She tried staying calm. But the woman looked her dead in the face and said, "It's a shame your wedding had such dark energy. God sees everything." My niece had to leave her cart and go outside to breathe. When she told me that, something in me hardened. It wasn't rage anymore. It wasn't even pettiness. It was resolve. Linda had crossed the line from nuisance to actual emotional damage. My niece's panic attacks had spiked so badly her doctor put her back on medication she hadn't needed in years. And Linda didn't care. If anything, she was proud of herself. So, I kept digging. I dug into her shop's payment trails. I dug into archived reviews. I dug into public county records, because at that point I was invested enough to know something big was hiding underneath all the scraps of information. Then I found the document that shifted everything. A single line buried in a PDF of county small business filings. A filing from 3 years ago. And a corresponding dissolution form filed 6 months later, flagged due to irregularities. I opened it. And right there, in black and white, was something I never expected. Something that made my heart start pounding so hard I had to sit down. This wasn't just tax evasion. This wasn't just petty theft from her church. This was something that tied Linda to a different name. A name linked to a business shut down for fraud. A name she absolutely did not want anyone in our neighborhood to know. And once I knew that, everything started lining up in a way that made my skin crawl. Because whatever she was hiding, it was big. Big enough to explain the fear behind her judgment. Big enough to explain why she lashed out so violently at anything she couldn't control. And big enough to bury her completely. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat at my dining table with my laptop glowing in the dark, the house quiet except for the fridge humming like it was nervous too. I kept staring at the dissolution form, rereading it over and over, making sure my eyes weren't playing tricks on me. Because the filing didn't list Linda as the business owner. It listed Melinda Harrow, her full legal name. I'd never heard her use it, not once. She always said her first name was just Linda, the way some people shorten Rebecca to Becca. I didn't think much of it before. But the second I saw that name on the form, something clicked in my head like a light snapping on in a dark attic. I copied the name and searched it. And then everything fell apart, her facade, her holiness, her whole moral crusader act. Because under Melinda Harrow, a whole different history came up. Bankruptcy records, a shut-down home business, a civil lawsuit from a woman in Columbia, Missouri, claiming Melinda took deposits for custom-sewn church banners and never delivered a single one. A restraining order filed by one of the women from her old church group, stating coercive spiritual manipulation and threats of divine punishment. My jaw actually dropped. It felt like discovering the villain's real name in a horror movie. But that wasn't even the real twist. The real twist came when I clicked on a link from a small-town newspaper archive. Local ministry market craftswoman under investigation for fraud, and there she was. A photo. 10 years younger, hair darker, but unmistakably Linda, standing behind a table of handmade faith crafts, smiling like butter wouldn't melt in her mouth. The article described a pattern almost identical to what she was doing now: direct payments, off-platform sales, double invoices, spiritual manipulation to avoid refunds, thousands of dollars unaccounted for. And one quote from a former customer that punched me in the chest: "She told me God said I wasn't owed a refund because my faith wasn't strong enough." I sat back, heart pounding, trying to process it. The judgment, the gossip, the way she called my niece's wedding pagan, the self-righteous whisper at the mailbox. It wasn't morality. It wasn't religion. It was a smokescreen. She wasn't protecting the neighborhood. She wasn't upholding some sacred standard. She was hiding from her past, hiding from the consequences, hiding from anyone who might look too closely. And when she called the police on my niece's wedding, when she labeled us a cult, that wasn't paranoia or concern. That was projection, fear, panic that someone else's joy, someone else's attention would shine a light where she didn't want it. But the biggest punch to the gut came when I opened one last link. A PDF uploaded by an old church congregation newsletter, the kind that still used word art titles and clip art doves. It detailed the fallout from her disappearing after the fraud accusations. The accusations weren't just financial. They claimed she manipulated members of the congregation, pressured them for special blessings, convinced vulnerable people to give money because God told her they needed to sacrifice comfort for spiritual purity. It sounded exactly like a cult. Not the backyard wedding she reported. She was the one running a cult-like scheme years ago, and when it fell apart, she changed cities, changed churches, changed her name just enough, then slipped into Maplewood like nothing ever happened. That was the first twist, the truth she desperately wanted buried. Melinda, not Linda, was a scam artist hiding under a layer of righteousness. She wasn't just harassing us out of boredom. She was building a fake identity to keep her past from catching up. And now I knew it, all of it. While she was out there whispering that my niece's wedding was pagan, she was really terrified someone might dig into her mess. And I was more than willing to be that someone. Because if this was the truth, then what I found next was going to absolutely destroy her. Once I knew who she really was, Melinda, not Linda, everything in me settled into this cold, steady place. Not rage, not panic, just focus. The kind of focus you only get when someone has shredded something precious to you and you finally have the tools to cut back. I didn't rush. I didn't storm over to her house. I didn't confront her at the mailbox or shout across the yard. Those are emotional reactions, and emotional reactions let people wiggle out of consequences. I wasn't giving her that. I was going to dismantle her life with the same quiet, methodical precision she used when she destroyed my niece's wedding. The first step was organization. I opened a new folder on my laptop and labeled it Harrow Evidence. Inside it, I saved everything. Screenshots of her Etsy, reviews mentioning Cash App payments. Screenshots of her pushing customers to pay off-platform. The PDF from the county business filings showing the dissolved fraudulent business. The newspaper article with the photo of her smiling behind her scam table. The archived forum thread about the vanished mission trip funds. The restraining order. Her old aliases. Her faithcraft claims about ingredients that caused allergic reactions. A timeline I built showing how she switched from Melinda to Linda after every scheme collapsed. And then I created a second folder. Current activity. This is where things got even more dangerous for her. I started tracking her Etsy sales in real time. Every morning, I'd check her listings, her recent reviews, her messages pushing off-platform payments. She was running the exact same fraud she'd been caught doing a decade ago. And the way she worded her blessings, selling spiritual favors, promising divine healing, urging people to buy multiple items for protection, it crossed more lines than I expected. The more evidence piled up, the calmer I felt. This wasn't just revenge anymore. This was justice she'd dodged for years, but I knew reporting her Etsy tax evasion alone wouldn't break her. People survive audits. They panic, sure, but they survive. I needed something that wrapped around her like a tightening rope, something she couldn't cut loose from. So I made a plan, a detailed, multi-step, airtight plan. Step 1, gather everything, every crumb, every inconsistency, every piece of her past she'd tried to bury. I wasn't letting any detail slip. Step 2. Confirm her financial trail. I sent myself test messages from a burner Etsy account pretending to be a customer. I asked if she could offer a discount for buying multiple bookmarks. She immediately replied, "Yes, but pay me through Cash App so I don't lose money to Etsy's system." God bless you. That message alone was enough to trigger an IRS investigation. But I didn't stop there. I bought one item through Etsy and she messaged me again, telling me to cancel the order and go direct. I didn't. I kept the entire message thread. She had no idea she was handing me her downfall step by step. Step 3. Confirm her identity crossover. I needed proof that Linda and Melinda Harrow were the same person. That part was easier than expected. Her old scam business had a photo of her house in the background of one picture, same porch, same railing, same cracked brick pattern. I saved that too. Step 4. Build the packet. I wasn't going to send the evidence piecemeal. I was going to send everything in one blow. To Etsy, to the IRS, to the Missouri Department of Revenue, to the Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division, and my personal favorite, to her church's administrative office. But I wasn't ready to pull the trigger yet. I still needed one thing. One final, undeniable, irrefutable piece that tied her current fraud to her past schemes. One piece that showed she never changed, never repented, never stopped manipulating religious language to scam people. And then I found it. Or rather, it found me. Because 3 days into my planning, I got an unexpected message from someone I did not recognize. The subject line in my email read, "You're looking into her too, aren't you?" My stomach flipped. I clicked it. It came from a woman in Columbia, Missouri, one of the original victims of her old fraud scheme. She'd seen my burner account snooping around old threads. She still had documents. She still had receipts. She still wanted justice. And she had something I didn't even know existed. Something that made my breath catch in my throat. A video. A video of Melinda confessing, crying, shaking, blaming spiritual warfare when confronted by her old pastor about the missing mission trip money. A video that had never been posted publicly. A video this woman had been too scared to release, and she was ready to give it to me. That was the moment I knew Linda wasn't just going to be exposed, she was going to be obliterated. I thought the video from her old victim was going to be the final puzzle piece, the smoking gun that would blow all of this wide open. But when we finally talked on the phone, the woman, her name was Carlene, dropped something I didn't expect at all. She told me she wasn't the only one keeping receipts. "There were 6 of us," she said quietly. 6 women in that church group who tried to confront her after the money disappeared. She didn't just steal from the mission fund, she took from us too, hundreds each. I froze. I'd assumed the fraud had been bad but confined to what I'd already seen. This was worse, so much worse. "And what happened to the others?" I asked. Silence stretched long enough that I thought the call dropped. Then Carlene whispered, "They left. Some moved away. None of them wanted their names tied to her mess. But Melinda didn't leave peacefully." "What do you mean?" she sighed, this tired, haunted sound that made my skin crawl. "She threatened us." I felt myself go cold. "Threatened you how?" Carlene hesitated, then said something I will never forget. "She told us God would punish us for betraying her calling." And then weird things started happening. Letters left in our mailboxes, anonymous messages saying we'd face wrath. One of the women came home to find a dead crow on her porch. Another found her tires slashed with a note that said, "Repent." We couldn't prove it was her, but we knew. My breath caught. Linda, the same woman who whispered, "Don't bring that pagan mess here." The same woman who shamed my niece. The same woman hiding behind faith like armor. She'd done this before. She'd escalated before. She'd retaliated before. I felt a slow, sick realization spread through me. This wasn't just a hypocrite or a scammer. She was dangerous, terrifyingly so. Her behavior wasn't random. It wasn't just moral policing. It was patterned, calculated, weaponized. I managed to ask, "Why come forward now?" There was another stretch of silence. Then Carlene said, "Because I saw the video of the police at your niece's wedding. When they said there were chants and rituals, do you know what it reminded me of?" I swallowed. Her excuses, Carlene confirmed. Whenever she needed to deflect blame back then, she called us ungodly or corrupted women. She pulled the same stunt, claiming she was defending the community from evil. It worked before. She ruined reputations. But this time, she slipped. She didn't sound righteous. She sounded scared. Scared. That word hit me hard. Why would Melinda be scared now? And then came the second twist. The one that changed everything about how I approached the plan. Carlene lowered her voice like she thought Linda could hear her across the state. She's running again. My pulse jumped. Running? What do you mean running? She's shutting down her online shop. She's deleting reviews. She's scrubbing old posts. Someone tipped her off. Someone told her people were looking into her. Carlene paused. She's preparing to disappear, just like last time. My stomach dropped. If she disappeared now, she'd get away with everything. Again. But then Carlene added one last detail that made my vision go tight and hot. She tried to close her Cash App too, but she made a mistake. What mistake? She forgot that her Cash App is linked to her old name. When she tried to delete it, the username updated. Automatically. I blinked. Updated to what? Carlene said the name on the fraudulent business, the name in the restraining order, the name in the news article. Melinda Harrow Ministries. She'd exposed herself. Not enough to catch the eye of a casual observer, most people wouldn't notice. But legally, financially, publicly. She just connected her two identities in a way that was undeniable. But that wasn't the real twist. The real twist came when Carlene said, almost too quietly, and she's not just running. She's planning another move. A chill ran down my spine. What kind of move? She's going to file a protection order, Carlene said. Against you, my throat closed. What? She's done it before. When victims started catching on, she'd claim harassment, stalkers, religious persecution. She'd file restraining orders to silence people. Then she'd skip town before hearings. She's getting ready to paint you as the threat. She's probably already writing up the statements. I felt the room tilt slightly. She's trying to flip the narrative, Carlene said. If she gets ahead of you, if she files first, you'll be the one on the defensive. I sat there, gripping the edge of my table, breathing hard. That was her plan, to turn me into the aggressor, to protect herself behind paperwork and lies, to vanish before anyone could hold her accountable. She wasn't just a scammer. She was a repeat offender who used the legal system like a shield. And now she was aiming it at me. My plan wasn't just revenge anymore. It became a race. And if I didn't move fast enough, Linda wasn't the one who'd lose everything. When I finally understood why she did all of this, why she sabotaged the wedding, why she hid behind religion, why she attacked anyone who got close to the truth, it didn't feel dramatic. It felt sickening, heavy, like the air itself changed. The answer came to me slowly, through conversations with Carlene, through old forum posts, through piecing together her past like broken glass. Every shard pointed in the same direction. Linda didn't lash out because she believed in anything. She lashed out because she believed in nothing except control. Religion wasn't her faith. It was her weapon, and people weren't her community. They were her cover. The more I learned, the clearer the pattern became, cold, calculated, chilling in its simplicity. Every single time she built a new life, she followed the same script. Find a church with soft boundaries. Usually one with older, lonely women. People who needed comfort. People eager to trust. Insert herself as the holy woman, the moral compass, the one who hears God. It gave her instant authority, power without accountability. Build a business that looked spiritual, blessed oils, scripture crafts, healing items. Anything that made people feel guilty for questioning her. Use that trust to squeeze money from the vulnerable. And when anyone pushed back, they weren't just wrong, they were under spiritual attack, tempting her, agents of doubt. When the lies caught up, when the money disappeared or people started comparing stories, she flipped the script. She became the victim. She filed restraining orders. She accused critics of persecuting her faith. She threatened divine punishment. She sowed fear and paranoia like seeds. Then she vanished, packed up, changed her name, started over. And she did it again, and again, and again. She lived off that cycle, off the chaos she created. The money wasn't even the real fuel. Carlene said something that stuck with me long after the call. She doesn't want power, she wants fear. She wants people to look at her the way she looks at God. And suddenly, everything clicked into place. The way she stared through people instead of at them. The way she whispered warnings instead of speaking plainly. The way she called my niece's wedding pagan, like it was a personal attack. The way she needed neighbors to see her as the guardian of morality. The way she couldn't stand joy she didn't orchestrate. The reason she called the cops that night. It wasn't about the wedding. It was about the attention. My niece's happiness drew people in. It created warmth. It made the neighborhood talk, but not about her. And someone like Linda. Someone who built her entire identity on being the moral authority. Someone who survived off having a spotlight to hide behind. Someone who had years of lies stacked up like unstable scaffolding. That was a threat. Happiness is unpredictable. Celebration is loud. Joy brings people together. And togetherness is the one thing she can't control, so she crushed it, not because she thought it was pagan, not because she feared sin, but because she feared irrelevance. Because if people bonded over something she didn't create, she lost control of them. Because if neighbors trusted each other more than they trusted her, she'd have no shield left. Because if my niece's wedding became the center of the block for even one night, people might stop looking at Linda as the voice of morality. And once that attention slipped, her lies would have nowhere to hide. She destroyed the wedding to protect her fantasy version of power. She humiliated my niece to keep herself elevated. She whispered at the mailbox because fear is her favorite tool. And she tried to file that protection order, tried to paint me as the threat. Because in her mind, anyone who sees the truth is an enemy to eliminate. Not with violence, but with paperwork, rumors, manipulation, fear. She's done it before. She was trying to do it again. She would have done it to me without blinking. And for the first time since the police stormed my backyard, I wasn't scared of her anymore. I was angry, righteously angry, because now I knew what she was, not a moral warrior, not a concerned neighbor, not a woman defending her beliefs. She was a parasite, feeding on fear, feeding on control, feeding on the trust of people who just wanted peace. And she hid behind religion because it was the easiest mask to wear. The truth about Linda wasn't that she hated pagans or weddings or chanting. The truth was she couldn't stand anything she didn't command. And with that clarity settling cold and steady in my chest, I carried the full weight of what I was about to do. She'd ruined enough lives. It was my turn now. I woke up the next morning with a kind of sharp calm I hadn't felt in years. The kind of calm that comes when you finally stop second-guessing yourself and decide to do the thing you've been circling around for too long. Linda wanted control, she wanted fear, she wanted to twist reality until she always came out looking righteous. Fine, I would give her something she couldn't twist. Facts, documents, receipts, her own words, her own history. Cold, boring, bureaucratic truth, the one thing she could never outpray, outshame, or outmanipulate. I spent the rest of the day assembling everything into a single, perfectly structured packet. A cover page at the front. A timeline next. Screenshots in chronological order, links to public filings, Carlene's video, the fraudulent business trail, her Cash App update revealing her old name, and all the messages where she instructed me to pay off-platform to keep God's blessings strong. By the time I finished, it looked like a case file, because it was. At 6:12 p.m., I hit send and sent it to the IRS Criminal Investigation, tip line the Missouri Department of Revenue Fraud Division, the State Attorney General's Consumer Protection Unit, Etsy's Integrity Team, Cash App's Financial Compliance Department, her church's Administrative Board. And just to make sure, our HOA president, who has been dying for a reason to shut down Linda's reign of holiness. Then I printed out a physical copy, put it in a sealed envelope, and dropped it off at the county courthouse with a request to attach it to any restraining order filings involving my name. She wasn't going to flip the story this time. Afterward, I went home, made tea, and sat on the porch like someone waiting for a storm to pass. Except the storm was heading toward her house. And oh, it landed fast. 2 days later, I heard shouting from across the street. Linda's voice, high, panicked, cracking. I stepped outside just in time to see 2 men in ties walking up her porch with clipboards and badges. State revenue agents. Her front door slammed. Her blinds twitched. She didn't come out. An hour later, an HOA board member slid a letter onto her porch. That night, someone from her church rang her doorbell and left a thick envelope. And around sunset, a sheriff's deputy taped something to her storm door. By the next morning, her Etsy shop was shut down permanently. Her Cash App account was frozen. Her church's Facebook page posted a carefully worded announcement about assessing allegations of financial misconduct among members. And her car was loaded with boxes again. Running, just like Carlene said. But this time she wasn't running quietly. This time the neighborhood watched. People stood on sidewalks pretending to check their mail, pretending to pull weeds, pretending not to stare while she tried to carry her life out to the trunk in a million frantic trips. She didn't look righteous, she didn't look holy, she looked exposed. At one point she spotted me standing on my porch, her face twisted, anger, fear, something else, something like recognition that the game was over. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, maybe a threat, maybe a prayer, maybe a plea, but nothing came out. She just got in the car, slammed the door, and peeled out of the driveway like a teenager caught sneaking out. That was the last time I saw her. She didn't file the protection order. She didn't show up at church again. She didn't log into the neighborhood group to rant about evil energies. She vanished. For real this time, without a chance to rewrite the ending. My niece came over the following weekend. We sat in the backyard, the same backyard where she collapsed during her vows, and she looked around quietly. "It feels peaceful again," she said. And she was right. Even the air felt different, like the whole block could finally breathe. We eventually held a small, private redo ceremony at a local park. No drama, no police, no whispering neighbor perched at a window. Just family, quiet vows, and a moment my niece finally deserved. When we finished, she hugged me and said, "I don't know what you did, but thank you for standing up for me." I didn't tell her everything. I didn't need to. I just told her the truth. Sometimes people hide behind goodness to cover up the bad things they do. And sometimes, someone has to pull the cover off. As we packed up the chairs, I looked toward the houses beyond the trees, toward the street where Linda used to live, and felt something settle in my chest. Closure, real closure. Not the kind where everything becomes perfect, but the kind where the person who hurt you can't reach you anymore. And when we walked back to the cars, my niece laughed and said, "Guess we won't be getting any more zucchini bread." I smiled. "No," I said, and honestly, my stomach's never been safer.